What are the motivations behind folks that'll literally go to the capital of a country and storm in and break shit? What's the psyche that's driving a lot of that? There's so much to explore there, and I feel like not just Hollywood, but indie filmmakers as well haven't gone there.
It's scary. It's complicated. You need money. Generally, indie filmmakers are more liberal and left-leaning, and when they have the opportunity to make anything, it's probably not going to be dwelling on that space or trying to humanize the people who perpetrate those types of things.
I'm Kale with Cinestruct, and I'm here with Alexander Bergman. Today, we're going to talk about political films, and we want to answer the question, should indie filmmakers make political films? So, of course, I was inspired by an article that I'm going to go over in just a minute. But first, Alex, what are your initial thoughts about political films and how filmmakers in general should think about political films?
Ah, it's such a loaded question. I'm very political in my personal life, in my conversations. However, when it comes to filmmaking, it's really tricky. It's really dicey. I don't believe that politics is the first foot you want to put forward when it comes to creating art. Generally, you want to not bury it, but you want to place it in subtext so that the audience can come to their own conclusions. You want to make allegories, you want to be metaphorical, because when you come out with direct political message movies, you're setting yourself up for a kind of failure. I personally don't want to go watch political message movies. We all go to the movies for escapism. But if you can watch, say, a horror movie about women's body rights, but it's packaged within subtext and a story rather than just a message hitting you over the head, I think you can get your message a lot further than if you make a straight up something you can get on the news type of movie. I always say, don't make a movie of something that you see on the news, because the news gives it to you for free. I'm not going to go pay $20 or bring my whole family out, spend $100 and do parking and all this and that to go see some political minded movie that has a message for me when I can see the same thing on television. I'm going to want some escapism. If you can put those same exact messages in my escapism, you might have a better chance of getting your message across. But that's the short of it. I have a lot more to say on it.
Yeah, it's good that you brought up this point about escapism because one film that I immediately thought of when I was thinking about this topic was Civil War, which came out earlier this year. And that obviously is a very political movie. I would say it doesn't take a strong position on a side. It kind of threads the needle, but it does give a form of escapism while touching on what I would think people would consider to be a nightmare scenario in terms of where politics could take a country.
Yeah, a very realistic scenario. Um, yeah. Did Civil War do particularly well? I think it made some money and got some recognition. Funny enough, a lot of people didn't like Civil War, and a big complaint I heard was that it didn't take sides enough. Now, um I don't know how we watch the same movie and would think that there's a very clear demarcation between one side and the other, and they very clearly point to what one side is capable of. Um, I mean, to me, that movie is what happens if January 6th kept going, if it wasn't stopped. And the president is quite obviously Trump. And in the end of that movie, comeuppance is gotten and liberty is re-won, and it's by a very clear side. So I don't know how you can watch that movie and need a more blatant representation of each political spectrum. For me, that movie threaded the needle of being extremely political while also not hitting you over the head with, hey, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. Because, I mean, it was incredibly obvious who were the bad guys and the good guys.
Yeah.
Even though the good guys were gleefully executing prisoners of war, um, I think that was beautifully done. Uh, but that only served to further enhance the message of, don't fuck with your neighbor. Like, because you may think you have your militias all figured out, but you're
Yeah.
not gonna win that one.
Yeah. I did just look up the box office for Civil War. So it had a production budget of 50
50.
million. Yeah, 50
Yeah.
million production budget. And then it took in a domestic haul of 68 million. And globally, they did 126 million. So with
Okay. So then,
marketing and everything, kind of a break even from a theatrical release. But I'm sure with like streaming and everything, that's probably a profit.
yeah, it's definitely a net positive result for them. They got to make I thought it was a pretty awesome movie.
I
Surprisingly,
mean, it was great.
a lot of other people did not dig it for those reasons I mentioned. But yeah, if it went any more blatant with the political sides, I think it would have just been a message movie.
Hmm.
And this managed to be an entertaining, experiential walk through what could happen in America and what they tried to make happen on January 6th.
Yeah. So when we do think about message political movies, I think the first filmmaker that comes to mind for a lot of people is Oliver Stone. Uh, JFK, Born on the 4th of July. I mean, his career is making both like historical movies that touch on modern history, but also he has a point of view that he gets across. And I came across this article titled "Oliver Stone's Political Films Were Massive Hits. Why did they vanish?" And it says his brand of incendiary on-screen stories are now radioactive, relegated to history as fear grips the market. So it seems like, I guess we're still talking in the domain of Hollywood, but there isn't as much of an appetite now to want to make these kind of movies. And I think there are several reasons why. A studio, if you want to call it a studio, like A24 can put out something like Civil War, but they kind of go against the grain in a lot of ways anyway. Uh, but largely, you don't see the other studios putting out anything near as polarizing, and we certainly don't see them putting out stuff anymore in the vein of what Oliver Stone would create.
Yeah, I mean, it takes an Oliver Stone to make Oliver Stone movies, and that's the issue. There's just no other filmmaker who attacks issues so head on and so passionately, and most of all, entertainingly. I mean, he's a cinematic virtuoso, like a, like incredible filmmaker. So he was able to make a 3 hour and 40 minute JFK movie that just breezes by, that you're just like left in awe of cinema as it constructs wild narratives and puts together pieces of something that we can maybe never understand. He did it over and over again. No one else has that kind of passion and verve for great cinema while also being so politically minded. I I'm sure if he were still making those same movies today, people would go and see them. But there's just no Oliver Stone out there right now. So when people go out and make political movies, generally they're very earnest, they're very message forward, they're they're not cinematic, and so we as an audience are deprived of that type of material these days.
For indie filmmakers, I think personally, I think it's a huge area of opportunity because if you're not working within the Hollywood studio system anyway, it's an opportunity to make something that would never come through the traditional market, to make something that would have a market, because at least when it comes to politics, we know that everybody has an opinion, even if not everybody wants to share it. And I think it's a little bit, not that I've seen every single indie film that's come out the past couple of years, but I think it's a little bit disappointing that we haven't seen more from the independent film community that want to tell these stories about our political climate. Like now, you mentioned January 6th earlier, which is one of the biggest political events in US history. And we haven't seen, again, I haven't seen every single indie film, but I haven't seen indie filmmakers tackling that topic. What are the motivations behind folks that'll literally go to the capital of a country and storm in and break shit? What's the psyche that's driving a lot of that? There's so much to explore there, and I feel like not just Hollywood, but indie filmmakers as well haven't gone there.
It's scary, it's complicated, you need money. Generally, indie filmmakers are more liberal and left leaning, and when they have the opportunity to make anything, it's probably not going to be dwelling on that space or trying to humanize the people who perpetrate those types of things. To see inside the mind of a third of America who goes out and votes for Trump. We That's why they hate Hollywood, because we don't tell their stories. Um, Somebody's got to. Ain't gonna be fucking me. um, Maybe they should go learn to make movies and tell us why they feel the way they feel. Uh, but I would love to see some stuff like that. That's what they were making back in the 70s. Uh, they were making movies about conservative leaning people, um, people with different worldviews, people who hated hippies and that type of stuff. And filmmakers were earnestly going and making movies about those types of people because it was provocative and shocking, for one. And it provided a glimpse into the mind of how someone like that thinks. It exposed conservative values, but making those people the main characters rather than some side punching bag. There was a lot of cool stuff back in the day doing that, where you're with when they're the main characters, you can empathize with them, and then when they do something horrible, um, it 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 shows how they got there. Shows it to us, and it also shows it to those conservatives. Um, a lot of those conservatives would be watching those movies, and when those main characters would go do something horrible, they would be cheering for them. Um, but that is a risk that these days we can't even take as indie filmmakers. We do not want to put these people on a platform. We do not want to show them, even when their motivations and their things are twisted. We generally don't like these types of anti-heroes anymore because people are so afraid as filmmakers of being misunderstood that they won't even go out of their way to showcase deplorables or whatever, because they're just afraid of being misunderstood within the liberal indie film or Hollywood community.
That's so interesting that you touched on. Well, one thing in particular, what you just said made me think of, and it really comes to the anti-hero trope that we do have in a lot of our stories. And of course, you think of Joker is the biggest example where this
Yeah.
character is endlessly popular for being destructive in a way that people find entertaining to watch. And it does also in a lot of ways. And it's funny, we talked about Todd Phillips and his approach to the movies previously, but he kind of touched on two sides of it. He touched on the side of it where it was in some ways satisfying to see that kind of agent of chaos. And then with the latest iteration of the Joker film, he showed the other side where it's like, okay, this guy is just a loser. And it was exploring in a lot of ways, it's not directly political, but in a lot of ways it is very political because there is what you see on the face of it and then what you see behind and the motivations behind a lot of these things. And in what you can do with storytelling and film, you can explore and show all the different layers to people that in other mediums, especially the news medium, very, very surface level how far you can get when you're interviewing someone um, or doing a talking head kind of thing. In the film medium, you can really dig into a character and find understanding that can hopefully have better understanding overall of how people are thinking, why society is how it is, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, Joker's an interesting example, which leads me back to what I was just thinking about and what I just mentioned about exemplifying um, conservative values uh, in the 70s they were doing in particular. So let's look at Taxi Driver. That's about a racist, conservative fuckwit who goes out and accomplishes the dreams of racist conservative fuckwits, which is to go after minorities and uh, people they think are eating away at the fabric of society. And in Taxi Driver, he literally kills them. Originally, Taxi Driver, all the whorehouse, everyone he was supposed to go shoot and kill was black, but they were trying to make the movie less racist. So they made the pimps all white. Originally, they were all supposed to be black, but the point is, the guy's fucking racist. That was the whole point. Um, so uh, to that effect, you know, Taxi Driver's a masterpiece, but it's about a terrible person uh, who's accomplishing essentially the conservative dream of cleaning up the streets. Um, Now you look at something like Joker, and well, Joker's just Taxi Driver skinned as a Batman movie, right? Uh, it's you, so you can make Taxi Driver today, but instead of it being a conservative thing or a racism thing, it's just he's just crazy. He's the Joker. Remember from Batman? Great. $1 billion. Um, I mean, that kind of takes the piss out of the whole thing because you're just having fun with an anti-hero rather than making any kind of social commentary. Perhaps there's some social commentary on mental health, I guess. But really it's just, you know, it's like I said, Taxi Driver with a new Fortnite skin. Um, what was interesting about this sequel, which I didn't see, is in case you liked the first Taxi Driver, and in case you misunderstood, sorry, not the first Joker, in case you misunderstood the first Joker, and you were one of those people, it's like saying if you went and saw Taxi Driver and you rooted for him, I'm, which is what Joker was. In case you went and saw Taxi Driver slash Joker and rooted for that guy, I'm letting you know with this sequel that you should not have been rooting for that guy. Well, audiences responded in kind by letting Todd Phillips know and Warner Brothers know we don't need to be explained the allegory. We don't need clarification on your metaphors. Um, we got that by watching the movie. You don't need to make Fight Club 2 and show that what they were doing was wrong. um, either either you get it, and you get the metaphor and the subversion, or you don't. And if you got it, you don't need clarification. And if you don't, well, you're just not. I mean, you like being dumb, perhaps, but you definitely don't like being shown that you were dumb in the first place for not getting it. I don't know if that answers your question, but
It's good. It's a good way to think about it. Um, I wonder too if as artists and as filmmakers, we're just scared of controversy. I wonder if, because it is so difficult to make a movie, relatively speaking, in 2024. And I should preface that by saying, if you want to make a movie, you can grab a phone and start making a movie, and nothing can stop you. But in terms of getting out to the market, that's a different story, and it's much more difficult to get your film to the market and be successful in the market with your film, I would argue, in some ways than it was previously. And I wonder if there is a kind of fear of stepping on toes, of, oh, I don't think somebody would want to distribute my movie because it takes it too far, or if it might alienate this group or something like that. I wonder if filmmakers are just literally scared of pissing people off.
you're saying that's why they're not making political minded films?
That's a theory that I have personally. I feel like people are just scared of stepping on toes these days in the films with the films that they're making.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have such a narrow window of opportunity as filmmakers that we have to create for ourselves. And so it is terrifying to alienate people and put them off and be unfiltered with any messages we might have. We want to make stuff more palatable to a larger audience, but you know, it I would argue that you have to be alienating and insulting and um controversial in order to get any kind of attention at all in this current landscape.
Yeah. There's another example that I came across in terms of films that were more political, and I would say this doesn't necessarily lean into the kind of politicization that we've mostly been talking about. There is a BlacKkKlansman that was written by Charlie Wachtel, and that, of course, was directed by Spike Lee and was about a black man that infiltrated the KKK. And that film was more of a historical film, a historical retelling. It was a, won it won an Oscar actually for I believe Best Adapted Screenplay. And that film is in some ways political, but not political in a way that is controversial. It's political in a way that speaks to a history, but not. And I bring this up to say that I feel like that's the kind of safe space in terms of when we talk about politics with movies. That's kind of where things go. We kind of look back at history and talk about the politics of the past because it's in the past. And I see that as being kind of the safe route, not the, I guess you would, the messaging movies would be the other path, or something like Civil War would be another path as well.
I mean, Black Klansman, I got off my ass to go see that movie in a theater because what a
Mm-hmm.
concept.
Mm-hmm.
um, even if
Great
it weren't
premise.
even if it weren't a true story, I would want to go see that because it's just so good. I mean, you can't beat it. It's in the title. I got to see how that plays out. Um, but we can all rally around hating on the Klan and making fun of the Klan and the idea of
Yeah.
a black guy going in the Klan. It's like, give it to me. What's gonna happen? And the movie was fun and entertaining too. It wasn't like, you know, a message movie about how the Klan is bad because we don't need that message. We're already there showing up to the movie. Um, that that's a great example of a political movie that doesn't have some sort of agenda that it's shoving down your throat, but also, is it moving the needle in any way? No. It's not going to convert people who are in the Klan or racists. um, so I don't
It
know,
would be
but
amazing
yeah,
if it did do that.
yeah, right. Just people taking their hood off. Like, now I understand the folly of my ways. um, Great movie though, or good movie.
Yeah, it was really well done.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess when it comes to making political films, personally, I want to see more of it. I don't think there's been enough of it. Certainly from the indie film community, I haven't seen much. And we know that Hollywood is risk averse now more than ever because of a lot of reasons. Partially also another thing that's been going on, the studios are largely now owned by these other co- companies, whether it's like tech or, they've consolidated, and there's a lot more to lose now because they're not just in the business of telling stories. They're in the business of selling toilet paper in some cases, with Amazon owning MGM now. And there is so much more of a cross, uh, there is so much more now in terms of what a movie is doing, what the goal of a movie is now, that isn't just storytelling anymore, where they're not going to venture into anything political or controversial because it's going to hurt the bottom line potentially for their other lines of business that has nothing to do with telling stories. And I think that's a big part of it too.
You're not going to see any type of political messaging that has any kind of spice to it in anything paid for by a corporate entity. I mean, these corporate entities are all right leaning anyway because of the better corporate profits they're going to get. So the only way to make any kind of political messaging in movies is to do it independently, aka without any money and without any support system uh, to distribute those messages. So I think that's why you're not seeing it. There's just no system, there's no pipeline for it. You have to do it independently, and it's like we're so desperate to make a career as indie filmmakers, and we only have one shot, really. Um, there's just there's no way. There's no reason to do it. You're just shooting yourself in the foot unless you're the most passionate, political minded filmmaker who can make something great without I don't know who can make something great in it and it gets to the finish line. And there's
Yeah.
yeah, it's terrible.
So we may have to wait for a new Oliver Stone to rise up and start telling some of these stories.
And you know, there might be there might be a few dozen new Oliver Stones out there. Um, they might be operating out of places like Europe or places with some sort of subsidization for their type of filmmaking, but it sure as shit ain't happening in America, where any type of dissenting voices get crushed. Uh, it's just that America ain't the place anymore for it. Oliver Stone found a little sweet spot in history, um, and was able to exploit it and profit from it, and made all of our lives richer in doing so. But even Oliver Stone can't make an Oliver Stone movie now.
Yeah, and that makes me very sad. But I really hope that we do get to see more. And if you're an indie filmmaker and you're watching this conversation and you have very strong opinions about our political climate, what's going on, and well, we're talking about the United States now, but it's not limited, of course, just to the United States. There's stuff going on all over the world. I think maybe at least try to write that script, see where it takes you, right? Just at least the script. And
Yeah,
maybe if
someone
you can
else.
get some interest in the script, you can see if you can go further.
Shit, spec scripts are selling now all over again. So you might write a really hot political spec script and it might get purchased. It won't get made. Don't worry about that, but it might get purchased for a good amount of money
I think a
by
lot of
some.
screenwriters would be happy with just getting their spec script, like
Yeah,
get some money from that, getting some money from that.
sold. And in the comments, if you know any people like Oliver Stone or operating on a political level anywhere in the world, I would love to see a list of those people. I'm very curious to see what type of stuff is out there how do we tell those stories in today's corporate film climate?
I definitely want to see that. So, yes, if you know those filmmakers, if you're one of those filmmakers yourself, drop it in the comments. And if you liked what we were talking about in this video, please like the video. Of course, again, comment, subscribe. Cinestruct, we're figuring out indie films for indie filmmakers, and we're having these conversations to help to just kickstart some discussions. Let's think a little bit more about how we can start making better films, and that's what we're doing. Alex, thank you so much for having this conversation, and we'll see you on the next one.